Okay, so first of all, can you hear me? And then we can get started. Okay, so seems like everyone can hear me, so let's switch to this. So, like I said, we have three main things to talk about from the last couple of weeks. We, of course, have just very recently the New York Comic Con stuff. Then we have the big video game announcement that is like part IGN, part podcast. And then also the interesting copyright information about the Aang movie that at least has something to discuss. And then there's also other stuff that we can get into here. So I guess we'll start with this just because it's the most recent news. Obviously I've put up separate videos about it, but you know, we have to have a discussion here on the stream about it because it's the one announcement that we were expecting. Would have been weird if they didn't do it, but it was the only announcement really coming out of the panel. Obviously, I think a side discussion probably has to be about communication coming out of these panels and how bad it is, mainly from the official accounts. I would less be criticizing, like, for instance, like Dark Horse, for instance. They posted this announcement, which was the one Dark Horse announcement at the panel. But, like, it's not like Abrams said what they were up to. It's not like Magpie said what they were up to. That's frustrating. But has the, like, official Avatar Instagram posted anything about New York Comic Con and this panel, including this announcement? I don't believe they have yet. And that's the problem, because if there's any account that like should be like officially live blogging or tweeting whatever the panel, it should be an Avatar account to cover all publishers, but they're just not there at all. The other thing is that I think very clearly this was not showing off publishing ramping up really at all. So again, everything switches to next year. We're waiting to see what happens at the two panels next year, where I would still expect us to get publishing panels, but we would also be expecting to have like basically an Avatar Studios panel. But the publishing panels next year should be big. So let's talk about this, and then we can talk about some of the other stuff that was said at the panel. So I think it's pretty clear that they got this announcement right. I think there's excitement about this comic beyond, especially Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer. This definitely seems along the lines of the kind of Azula in the Spirit Temple announcement in terms of the combination of characters and general idea of a comic that would kind of hit the fandom the hardest. Because if they did just a random character grouping, it would have been like cool, but not super great. Because ultimately, Bounty Hunter the Tea Brewer, I think it's fair to say, didn't hit that hard, even though it's a pretty good book. It didn't seem to capture the attention of the overall fandom as solid as it is. Whereas this, at least, it solves a few things of like, one, Key, that's pretty exciting for people who like the comics. May, people like May. Some people don't, but you know the people who don't. And Zuko, of course. Like, it's felt a little bit like, are some of the main characters, like maybe Aang and Zuko, a little bit off limits maybe for these comics, but no, they're willing to have Zuko be on the cover of one of these things, and that's kind of interesting. But it solves the problem of like, when was the last time May and Zuko interacted in a comic? It was 8 years ago. Smoke and Shadow Part 3, 2016. That's what this is a follow-up to. Now, obviously, we had Zuko in North and South, but May wasn't in North and South. And like, there's been short stories since then, but in general, this dynamic, we have to go back to Smoke and Shadow Part 3 for the last time we got an update on it. So, one of the main canon ships, it's kind of been crazy that they've been broken up that long. And the hope, obviously, to a certain degree, is that there is either a reunion to get back together, or it's left in a spot where that feels very, very clear and obvious. And that's the kind of crazy thing to think about. It's just, it's taken so long to get here. It's been 8, real world years, but the actual kind of in-universe time gap between Smoke and Shadow and Imbalance is still somewhat unclear, but it's maybe a year at most, and even then I'm not super sure about that. So that's a weird one as well, where this seems to just, I guess, be what these characters were up to during Imbalance. That's what a lot of these comics seem to be doing, in that's roughly where I'd place Azula in the Spirit Temple. Is it's during or just after Imbalance, and I'm guessing that this is the same situation here. We're not moving, I think, substantially forward. Maybe something in this comic will tell us that, but typically they don't seem to be doing that. We'll see if they have bigger things for the comics, maybe once Avatar Studios gets going, but the hope here is just that they maybe have some important stuff that kind of puts them into position. I suppose in chat, will this be the actual release date come, getting closer to the day? Will this remain, or is it going to get a delay? And by delay, I mean, if it only gets delayed by a week or 2 weeks, I'm kind of okay, fair enough, it gets adjusted. I'm talking about 1, 2, 3, 4 plus months, that sort of thing. Is it going to be one of those books again where the Bounty Hunter Tiburon, for instance, just slowly descended from May into August, and it just didn't seem like there were any signs of it stopping? Because where it's positioned right now, it's the month after the Mako comic, which is actually fine because that's just where it ends up, where Korra is coming back from everything. It's just Korra's been on delay and it's going to start up again, basically. They've often had books released pretty much back to back, so I wouldn't rule out the idea that just because the dates are close together, that's a problem. They're always releasing stuff pretty much side by side. I hope that they've got better about this, and that is a date that sort of factors in some adjustment. And the other thing to keep in mind is that if it does get delayed, it's highly likely that its delays will be different than what the Mako comic has been experiencing, where that book, we actually know there were art problems that basically delayed the book by a year or whatever. It's printing issues, the scheduling for that, it's shipping logistics stuff that caused these things to happen. The books themselves, most of the time, are done, ready to go, well before release. Look at some of the times I've got review copies for books, 4 months-ish before the actual release, sometimes longer if it gets a delay more towards the end. That's kind of an interesting one, just to kind of look at that stuff overall. I hope that they avoid stuff with this and we can get back kind of going again. Getting into the description, obviously we had this one from day one, basically. Royal Fire Academy for Girls. So obviously this is the gimmick of this book, is that it's called Ashes of the Academy, and it's about Ki going to attend the academy. So, that's just interesting by itself, because we've heard so much about it. It is it's backstory for a bunch of characters in different eras, headmistress, or they attended the academy and stuff like that. But we're actually going to get to see it is the exciting thing here. And they're really going for the idea: strict curriculum and stricter instructors. And so this of course, worries Zuko. I do wonder, like, how much they're going to address the idea of, like, does Zuko have the authority to make that many changes? Have changes already been put in place? Is he restricted to a certain degree from making certain changes to the academy because it's been around for so long? Given that it must play its role in the Fire Nation, propaganda during the kind of 100-Year War. We'll see what actually happens there. Am I worried that working on multiple projects will lower the quality of their content? Not really, just because it's been so long. Like, they've been working on the stuff for so long that I have to just assume that they're making it happen in a way that makes sense. Mike and Brian typically, I think, are pretty good about that they will only release stuff in a very, very good position. We'll see when we get closer to things, because we don't have a lot of details about that, but it's looking good, I think, so far. So, yeah, interesting stuff there. A seed of doubt is planted about the new headmistress. Now, this is obviously going to be an interesting thing. Like, I'm guessing new character based on the fact that we didn't get a name here. The question, though, is sort of like, who put this new headmistress in place? If there's a new headmistress, it would almost feel like Zuko as the Fire Lord maybe had some sort of a role in this, but, we don't know the full structure of the Fire Nation in terms of, like, is the Fire Lord making all of these decisions about every single thing like that? Likely not. Zuko's, power, I suppose, to do stuff within the academy probably goes as far as being able to recommend May to be a new teacher instructor at the academy. So that will be kind of an interesting one overall. And yeah, the big thing obviously for May and Zuko fans is, the idea that Zuko, one of the people he trusts the most, May as an academy teacher. Now, obviously the problem, I think, was never really... The idea of obviously Zuko, why they broke up, I suppose, is that Zuko struggling with all the decision making, being the Fire Lord in those early comics, didn't communicate well with May, didn't bring her in, maybe fully trust her in the way that was kind of needed, and that caused the breakup effectively. Now, obviously, since the promise, Zuko has grown as a character quite heavily. Like, just within the promise, he grows quite a bit. And Smoke and Shadow, of course, we also saw that as well. May has also grown as well. Like, obviously, Smoke and Shadow being, where she got to be quite heavily in focus as well. And they already did good work there to kind of bring them back together for the most part. It's just about how they approach doing the dynamic here overall. So yeah, can May keep a watchful eye over Ki and keep her on the right path? Or will the Academy's cruel culture shape her footsteps into those of her other half-sibling, Azula? So this is a very interesting final tagline to have here. To even, I think, mention Azula in the context of this is quite interesting. Just because I'm personally not expecting to, like, see Azula present day appear in the comic. If she appears in the comic, it'll be because we get, like, a flashback or something like that. That whole idea. So that's my guess on the Azula side of things. But the other point is that Ki is presented as being the focus here. And we haven't really seen what Ki's thoughts are on the idea that she has a sister and how she feels about that. We get the rough idea that, like, Azula views it as, like, this is Ursa, quote unquote, replacing her with a new daughter. Though we maybe haven't super heavily addressed that kind of all that much. And so you know, on both sides, there's a sense of like, okay, yeah, we need to kind of cover that overall. And then, yeah, it sets up that the book, if you were to kind of say, as like a one-shot, who are the focus characters, it sounds like it's a Key and Mei book with a bit of Zuko. Now, maybe there'll be more Zuko than we maybe think, but I'm guessing we're in the academy for most of this book, and Mei's there as a teacher, Key's there as a student. That's going to be what the dynamic is most of the book. And sure, we can catch Zuko up on things behind the scenes. If we have a bunch, if Mei is quite heavily in focus, she can obviously just interact with Zuko, I guess, when she wants. That's kind of interesting overall. I'm half expecting the last line will be just writing clickbait. I find that the comics, at times, yeah, the descriptions maybe aren't the most amazing, but I don't find that the descriptions overall, excluding some of the weaker books, like the Aang Ice birthday thing, that kids book, they don't overly tend to lie about stuff like this, especially this one where it's very direct, where we're Fire Nation royal family focused. The first in this new trilogy was Azula. Like, literally, we're talking about family here, someone else who attended the academy. Are we trying to maybe really address the idea that the academy also played a big role in shaping Azula into who she was? But then, like, how did it affect Mei? How did it affect Ty Lee and stuff like that? That's kind of interesting overall. So that's interesting. Mei as a teacher is interesting, because what they're obviously trying to do here is to not just have Mei's inclusion in the book just be sort of for shipping purposes. That, oh, it's the royal family to a certain degree, and then let's include Mei just for the relationship. They want to characterize Mei properly. I feel Smoke and Shadow did a good job at characterizing Mei, and I'm excited to see what they do here, because is this literally just going to be like a random cover story of like, let's hope Mei can do a good job acting as a teacher, or is there actually a subject that she's like really suited to be a teacher for, and then when she jumps in, is she actually going to take to this really well? And to a certain degree, are we maybe setting Mei up to be a future headmistress of the Royal Fire Academy for Girls? And that's going to be sort of one of the things that really is a highlight for Mei going forward as a character, you know, like into the kind of adult years for these characters. And that this is starting that path for Mei, so that there's a bit of an arc here for her. That could be interesting to see what the situation is here, because I'm guessing Zuko has chosen her for like a reason, and that she feels like she can do it, but is there a specific thing? Because I'm assuming it's maybe not like knife throwing lessons, or maybe it is, who knows. If it's got a cruel culture, maybe it still has some of that kind of training stuff, or you know, is it something else? That could be kind of interesting to see some other maybe speciality that Mei has. We know she can do undercover work because she did it obviously as a Kyoshi warrior with Azula, but there's kind of a difference between, I suppose, being undercover as sort of a Fire Nation kind of warrior to being a Kyoshi warrior, and then you'd have to be a teacher. So that's kind of an exciting one, I think, just to give Mei something else to do. But then we also do want to see the relationship kind of happen again, because it's kind of weird that it's so long post-series, post-Korra as well, and we don't know like who Izumi's mother is. We all, I think, basically know it probably is Mei, and we've been we've been waiting for something like this, like positive Mei and Zuko stuff, for a while now. That's the kind of situation there. So, I'm excited for that. And then I suppose the other thing here is Ki. Obviously, it's a bit of a tricky thing where it is a quite young character. Like, let me actually look this up, because off the top of my head, I actually don't know if we know Ki's age. Yeah, I'm not sure if we know exactly how old Ki is, but I'm guessing she's somewhere in the 5, 6, 7 range. And the Fire Academy, again, like, we don't know how exactly it works. I'm guessing this is maybe something like she's turned 6 or something like that, and because of that, she's joining the academy, maybe. There might be a slight time skip post imbalance to get us to the idea that she's now 6 or something like that, but I'm guessing that's probably what they're kind of going for here. So obviously the idea is she's a firebender now, and to a certain degree, I guess this is the academy you go to if you want to do more firebending training, because they made that distinction in the Roku novel that Ta Min didn't go to the Fire Academy. She went to the university, and to a certain degree that was an interesting one, because she's a firebender and she didn't go to the academy where she would have maybe leaned in that direction. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, I'm excited to see what they do with her, because I think he stands out as a pretty interesting young character. Obviously just because of the whole, like, Ursa and Orin, the kind of new royal family dynamic, the potential of, like, finding out what her opinions on Azula are. But then also, I suppose, for the Zuko Mei dynamic, it'll be interesting to see if, like, he has anything to tell Mei about what she's heard about her, from Zuko. I'm guessing they might do some relationship teasing in that way, where Ki just very earnestly says some stuff that reveals the truth of how Zuko feels to Mei, and we can get those sort of fun dynamics that will be sort of interesting. But also, maybe Zuko's a bit kind of awkward talking to Ki about Azula. Maybe Ki starts to ask Mei about Azula, and that's why Azula comes up, and we might get that angle on things of her trying to learn more about her sister. And so the mention of Azula in the fact that everyone attended this academy is quite valid overall. Now, do I for a second think that they're actually going to do something where, like, they have Ki become some sort of a pseudo Azula? I'm not sure about that. The idea that the tease that the academy is going to shape Ki into an Azula, I don't buy that, really. Obviously, the whole construct here of Mei being here, what Zuko's doing because he's worried, is to stop that. But I think we'll get some interesting exploration of this as an idea overall. So, yeah, that's an interesting one as well. I suppose for me, well, one thing I want to know in the chat definitely on this book is, what do you expect the focus to be? We've got 3 kind of notable characters here. By the sounds of things, if you were to say one character is the focus of this one shot, it's Ki. But, like, are you expecting much Zuko specifically in this book? How much Mei are we going to get? Because, again, the one example of this we have of, like, a real split dynamic is the last book, The Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer, where it felt like it was sort of 65% June 35% Iroh, but I don't feel that either character maybe benefited too much from the split, where like I wanted more June, but I also wanted more Iroh, and it kind of ended up taking away a little bit from what the book theoretically could have been. And I'm just a little worried that like it's still going to be 72 pages. That are we going to have enough time to do all these dynamics where we effectively have to introduce the Academy properly, and especially what it's like in this era. We, to a certain degree, are going to like have to properly introduce who Ki is as a character, getting the spotlight. Set up the whole idea of Zuko planting Mai as a teacher in the Academy, introducing a new headmistress, likely a bunch of other students as well to have Ki interact with other characters, and give Zuko time to do stuff, and give Zuko and Mai a chance to do it, and probably somewhere in here have maybe at least a tiny small Academy flashback for some of the other characters, plus maybe Ursa and Noran having a scene as well. There's a lot to do here, and I just worry that the one thing that could go against this book is just, this is a lot of important stuff that we all care about. Is there going to be enough time to do things? Like, if the last book in 72 pages didn't really have enough time to do like June's backstory and a bit of Iroh backstory really, and make it feel like really good, I'm a little worried this could be a little bit busy overall. But we'll see what they do. We'll see how this goes, because, you know, what are they trying to do here? Overall, in terms of, is this meant to position these characters ahead of Avatar Studios content or not? Overall. So yeah, for now, I think that's most of my thoughts on this. I'm pretty positive. Definitely a lot more overall interested in this than Bounty Hunter and the Tea Brewer. And I think, I suppose, prior to getting preview pages, I almost feel a little bit overall better than I think I did at this stage with Azula in the Spirit Temple, because there was a lot of mystery about, like, is that actually going to progress her arc? Is it going to be more character driven? It ended up being a quite dense overall kind of book. Not a lot of progress, but it was good. I think this has the tools to work with that should make it good and interesting, in that I think when it comes out, people will be very eager to read this book, kind of unlike the last one, and at least that creates a little bit of hype overall. Seems like there's a discussion going on in chat about, you know, how much of the focus of like Avatar Studios stuff should be getting like original writers in versus like letting new people do it and stuff like that. The comics feel very off. I don't agree with that at all, honestly. I see a lot of people in the fandom often say that, like, very broad criticism of, like, overall, the comics feel off. All the characters are written out of character. Heavy criticism of Gene Yang, sometimes of Faith Erin Hicks, and at least in my opinion, like, I don't really feel that way, like, at all. Like, in my mind, very, very clearly, Gene Yang knows and understands Avatar and knows how to write these characters really well. And especially those early comics did really important and interesting things. I thought he wrote them well, given that stuff was happening. Whereas some of the other comics felt like they weren't really doing anything. And so because the characters were exactly the same, it's like, this is very safe. And like, okay, the character feels like the character, but you haven't done anything really. That's kind of like my thoughts, where like, at least in my opinion, I still maintain that like imbalance probably is not my favorite of the comics, but like especially the really earlier comics had a really good blend of like doing very important stuff, and I just think using the page count kind of well. Faith Aaron Hicks, I think is good. I just don't quite feel we've got a proper sense for, you know, her doing content that's like really important. That like if she had to write the search, I'd like to know like how that would have kind of worked out overall. Whereas a lot of the other comics have been a bit like, say, Katara the Pirate Silver and stuff like that. That's a very safe book and platform to write Katara, for instance, where not really much going on with her, and it's just Katara mainly interacting with the new character in that book. Mostly the same with, say, like Toph Beifong's Metal Bending Academy, where it's like, I think pretty much any writer knows how to write general Toph just doing Toph things. But say like Jean Yang in The Promise, I thought wrote a very good initial arc there for Toph with the early days of the Metal Bending Academy. And those metal bending students, I think, are pretty good examples of, if there's maybe any issue with, say, like The Promise, yeah, they're very one-note characters initially. But as we go through the books, those characters, I think, develop quite well into much more interesting characters as we kind of go forward. Are they still... they're still not probably the greatest characters overall, but they took them from being kind of one note initially, and then they're doing some quite interesting stuff in, say, like, what they're in, like, North and South, being kind of quite important. They help save the day in, like, the Rift and stuff like that whole idea. Jiaibao referenced in the comments, which I don't know, but if anyone checked out the video I did earlier on this week covering the Aang era adventure from the Uncle Iroh's Adventure Guide, Jiaibao was referenced in that. So it's the first new Jiaibao content in a pretty long time. Not a lot of information, but we did get a little bit of new Jiaibao information overall. Let's see. When they say they're going to start ramping up on publishing, will they be adding another line of comics like Kyoshi or maybe even Yang Chen? This is what we don't know. Ramping up on publishing is like, okay, currently what we basically have is Avatar one-shots, Korra one-shots, and reprint books when they can, and I don't know, art books whenever they can possibly come out, whatever. Obviously that's something that's going to immediately open up when the new content starts, is like, say, art book for the Aang movie. That is going to be a thing early on. Beast of the Four Nations is eventually going to come out, and they have that. But I wouldn't really call that ramping up. I do think ramping up has to suggest something more than that. So it's like, does it mean we get to return back to proper trilogies? Or is something else being added to the lineup? Like, can we use the other eras? Or are we doing other avatars? Because we'll address one other thing that was said at the panel. And again, I don't even have full context for this, but apparently someone who was at the panel posted this story and said something along the lines of, there's new avatars being developed at Avatar Studios. Which is like, yeah, we know. But the interesting point about this is that it was said, as far as I'm aware, by the person involved with Magpie Games and the related to the RPG. Because you can see in the background they have the Roku Kickstarter information stuff up. So it was that guy talking, and I'm sorry, but like he's not mentioning stuff about the movie or the shows. He's talking about publishing, giving a slight teaser of the future. I think suggesting, based on the way they're talking about this, that either because it's known that other avatars are being introduced in the new animated content, that they're going to be open to be used in publishing. So for instance, like comics set in the Earth avatars era after Korra. Or do they mean they're actually allowing publishing to like debut information on new avatars? Obviously we've kind of been getting that through some of the reveals in the novels already. But for instance, what if they released a RPG book that just gave us information on a brand new era, a brand new avatar, and it's just RPG, it's the Avatar Salai book or something like that, you know, just without trying to make up a brand new name. And it's just, we basically know nothing about Avatar Salai, but here's the information in the RPG. That could be kind of interesting. And then it's sort of unclear about if this is related to all of publishing or not, because that's something the comics can also do, is that I don't think the comics are going to miss out on the opportunity to do stuff like, you know, comics that relate to, say, the next Avatar after Korra, that stuff, and who knows kind of what else. That whole idea. So we'll see what exactly kind of happens there. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, otherwise the only other information was the whole Voyage of the Unity thing for the RPG. Which, again, this is how terrible the information is. I don't think they still made this public, what they showed off. And it's kind of weird because, as far as I'm aware, Beetle and Grimm were not in attendance at New York Comic Con, but obviously Magpie were. So they revealed information, but it seems like they're not really communicating super well. It's going to be 5 more adventures, all set in the Roku era, about, of course, the Unity, the ship. That whole idea. Is there a price for the new RPG? I suppose, do you mean this, or the Uncle Iroh Adventure Guide, which is officially releasing in 3 weeks or whatever? Because this, I don't think has a price yet. Other than the fact that it is a premium thing. So it's going to be basically 5 adventures is what's in the current adventure guides. But then it's also going to be a premium thing as well. So like I think on the listing it says that there's going to be maps, encounter cards. I think it says artifacts or artwork, and something else like handouts or something like that. So I'm guessing like blueprints and stuff like that. That whole idea, you know, that whole stuff is interesting. This really depends on the pricing, because like for just a book with say 5 adventures and maybe something else, we're probably looking at like what the usual pricing on those books is, like what, 35, 40, maybe a little bit more. But then it's going to be, you're probably talking about maybe doubling that for all the extra physical stuff, unless they do a really good deal. It depends on how much physical stuff there is actually going to be, but I'm guessing it probably will be like somewhere in the 100 range, because I don't get the impression they're going to maybe go crazy all out, but I don't think we know enough right now to suggest otherwise overall. Yeah, the discussion about like original creators doing stuff still continues to go on in the chat. It's that idea of like, how could someone new just come in and write the first thing back in this world? It's like they get assistance from Avatar Studios. It's not like someone who just knows nothing about Avatar is coming in and just writing complete like nonsense or something like that. Like it's a collaborative process. Like obviously this person is going to be credited as the writer for the script, but it's like Mike and Brian are there supervising everything at Avatar Studios, and you know they're going to make the stuff feel right. So that's the kind of point here, is that look, Mike and Brian can't do everything. They never did do everything. The closest it feels like it came to content being all Mike and Brian was like Korra Book 1, where at least they're the writers on like every episode there, but they weren't the directors, you know, on every episode, you know. Other people were still involved, like they still had lots of other people there. It's just like Mike and Brian are credited with the scripts, and then they immediately brought other people on board afterwards. So of course they're bringing people on board for multiple shows, multiple movies, and supervision over like publishing as well. Really care about the dialogue and how nuanced the shows were. Other writers might not be able to manage that. I think Avatar is well respected enough of a property that any writer brought on board to write anything Avatar related is expected to deliver something good. Like I don't think there are many franchises out there where, you know, like Avatar, where I think there is just a respect from pretty much anyone coming on board that they know if they have to do their best work for especially like a relaunch Avatar movie overall. And it, to a certain degree, maybe that's part of the plan, is that they're getting more of a kind of professional writer in, and they're helping that process out rather than maybe doing it the other way around. But like, look, there just needs to be an acceptance that like new people are allowed to work on the franchise. New people are going to come in all the time. Mike and Brian can only do so much. The whole idea of Avatar Studios is that they are making an effort to do a lot of Avatar stuff and try to keep it as consistent as possible overall. That whole idea. What else is going on here? Yeah, like there's some discussion about like sourcing of information. Look, it's a mess because so little of the information about this movie has been made like super public. Some of it is sort of like rumored, not like officially confirmed information, but it's like pretty good. Other times, like there was like a random article that confirmed it, but it didn't really like move too much, that sort of thing. It's interesting to do that. Like, again, I don't think now is quite the time to kind of have the freak out about who is or isn't involved on it when we don't know that many people who are or are not involved in it overall. Ki melting the metal. So yeah, this is obviously the big reveal from Smoke and Shadow, that Ki is a firebender, and she does a quite impressive feat of melting through a metal door with her firebending, which is notable. Like, it is possible for firebenders to do this, of course, but that's a quite impressive feat. My point on this, I think, has always been that, 1, emotions fuel powerful bending. 2, the idea of someone awakening their bending for the first time and doing particularly powerful bending at that moment, I think is potentially a possibility type thing. And plus, yeah, we don't know how thin the door was. I think the point that they're trying to make is mostly just that clearly Ki is a pretty high potential firebender. I don't think they're making any statement that like where exactly on the list she is, but at a young age, just discovering her bending, she looks like she has the potential to be a quite skilled firebender going forward. And that's cool because, again, Roku bloodline added power to the royal bloodline, so you know it works. We'll see it. We'll see. Is there a chance they maybe overdo it with how powerful Ki is in this book? Perhaps, but I think they know what they're doing, and that with not maybe enough training and stuff like that, it's hard to tell what exactly the situation is going to be. Yeah, Avatar news. Look, I'm pretty sure it's just one of those things where, to a certain degree, it got to be a situation where it's like all the pressure is on him to reveal all the information, and then half of the people who look at that information are criticizing you and being like, this is unsourced, and like, not reading the articles, not really understanding what he's saying and stuff like that. And then especially when we know there have been times when like he was asked to like take stuff down and stuff like that. I get it. It might just be like a bit of a stressful situation to be like the main leaker person involved in like the entire fandom when like no one else really has any sort of access. And I don't really kind of blame anyone for kind of doing that. Some people do get kind of weird about it. Like, was he the best maybe like news headline writer at times? No. But especially if you read the articles, I feel like there were not that many times when he really just completely misled us overall. And most of it ended up, I think, being correct, or I'm guessing will prove to be correct, or will prove to be part of the early creative process in Avatar Studios, as we'll find out, I guess, in the future. Because again, we're getting to the point now where it's been long enough since a lot of those posts and stuff like that, where that might have been the plan like 3 years ago. That whole idea. I don't know why Zuko would choose May as a teacher. That doesn't feel like May to me. Well, the main reason, I think it's this. He chooses May because it's someone he trusts the most. The book is obviously going to have to explain, like, why May works as a teacher to a certain degree. Like I get that idea of, like, it's not that I'm doubting May could teach. There are probably topics she could teach on, and we'll probably actually learn something new about her as she adjusts to this role. But I think the significance of this is just that, I guess, it's the Fire Academy for girls, so he pretty much, I guess, has to have a kind of female, so someone close to him who is female, and install them in, and I think it makes sense for it to be May, realistically, because, she's from a noble family. She is skilled, a pretty impressive non-bender. She is a former graduate, I guess, of the Academy as well. So all that reputation, you're like, okay, the Academy is going to accept her. It's just, I'm wondering what the kind of cover is in a way. Like, what is she coming in to teach? I'm not really sure. Like, is she just maybe put in charge of the kind of new entrants into the Academy? So like the kids class, basically. Because she maybe has experience with that with her younger brother and all this sort of stuff. Who knows, overall. Possibility the inclusion of Genji into canon. Look, Genji's a fan project. They're not going to in any way touch that, address it as canon. Like, it's just absolutely in any way not going to happen. Getting a Fire Avatar set in the Cyberpunk era. We have to wait and see, of course, like what exactly the upcoming era is. But, it's maybe a possibility in the future that we do get Cyberpunk Avatar. But yeah, let's move on from this and go into some of the other stuff. Talked about this, briefly mentioned this comment in terms of, again, when publishing ramps up, which I'm guessing we will hear about probably at some point next year. Like SDCC, NYCC next year is going to kind of happen, I guess, overall. We're going to see what this is. Because, like, there's obviously this stuff, which is, I guess, new, big content. But then there's also, like, tie-in material. There's going to be stuff like, I'm guessing, prequel comic leading into the Aang stuff, because again, there's a giant gap between where the comics end and where the Aang movie is going to start. So there's room to do prequel stuff there leading into it, and taking advantage of that. There'll be a lot of the other publishing stuff, like there's probably going to be a junior novelization of the movie, and a lot of other kind of publishing stuff like that relates to that. And more of the maybe kids style book to just have like the merchandise out there. Can I definitively say that? Like, of course I can't definitively say that, but like, I think like it's expecting a miracle for them to, like, what you're literally asking for, like, them to choose an avatar, name them Genji, do exactly what the fan thing did, and then it's like, are they gonna work with the people who made Genji? I don't think they're going to do that, really. It's fan content, and I just think, in a way, because it like exists in that way, they're probably purposefully going to make sure that it doesn't look like Genji, just to avoid that whole kind of situation overall. Like, if you're a fan of Genji, like, cool, but like I really, 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 really do not think that they are going to in any way attempt to take anything from that, especially canonize it in some way. I just don't think so. Let's see. You think Avatar Studios get to do any focus on the smaller characters of ATLA post-war, Teo, Haru? I don't know. I really don't know, because the one-shots have shown us that you need a main character to give focus to a more minor character. Like, you need Iroh to give June spotlight, in that if Iroh wasn't in that book, you're kind of thinking about, will the book sell without a really notable main character on the cover? Maybe if we do a short story collection, again, there's room to do stuff with the other characters, but that's the problem with the comics right now, is that they are struggling for each part of the franchise, like Avatar and Korra, to get even one book out a year. So the idea that we maybe get multiple of these, plus much smaller scale comics to cover more minor characters, I just don't necessarily see where it's happening. And this is where, you know, the actual proper trilogies come into play, because it allowed you to tell bigger stories where you could have, you know, like in The Promise, like you had the freedom fighters play a pretty interesting role, where like Sneers got to jump into the spotlight as like the forgotten freedom fighter, but he got to be a sort of like secondary main character to a certain degree during parts of The Promise. That was kind of cool. And it's just like you lose certain opportunities because you're not doing the big comics anymore. Um, so yeah, publishing is going to ramp up. Let's move on to the AAA Avatar game. So this is the one that they put up but then took down, because I'm guessing they didn't really want to commit to Ice Wars as being what people are really calling the game, and that this maybe isn't really an official logo potentially. But so yeah, I'm glad I caught this, so we have it. But of course, this is the main concept art that they gave us, and you can see it says it twice. It's concept art. It's obviously not representative in any way really of what the game's going to look like, obviously from a graphics point of view. It's mainly just a bit of a settings insight of like, yes, an ice age is threatened, volcanoes erupt, looks like waterbenders are likely going to be the villains potentially of the game, because of course they will be able to take advantage of an ice age. We have a visually, you assume this is maybe some sort of a fire avatar, but I'm not actually sure about that, because I think when on the podcast, when I was describing this image, when I went through it, I was kind of like, wait, is this actually meant to just be an overall fire avatar? Or is this just meant to be an avatar who is wearing things that sort of represent the different element cultures? Because you can sort of see like, okay, Fire Nation kind of armor here. The shoulder pad, though, maybe feels a little bit Earth Kingdom-y. The wraps on the arms kind of maybe feel a bit maybe like early Airbender, as does the kind of necklace thing around the waist. And then the pants maybe feel a little bit Airbendery, and then very clearly kind of maybe more Water Tribe kind of boots, plus top knot. So it's kind of like it either is meant to be representing that it is a fire avatar, or representing the customization aspect of like you can choose what way the character is going to look. I don't really know, but yeah, it looks like the bending at least 2 elements here, maybe actually 3, because like we don't know if the rock that they're standing on is like earth bending that they're doing. But yeah, for sure fire bending, and it looks like this ice pillar also is from the Avatar. And then most notably here, not a typical Avatar dragon. Not a typical Avatar dragon. Looks like some sort of a cat dragon. If even that. Maybe dragon is perhaps not the other part of this animal to maybe get across. Maybe it's cat with something else. But still, kind of cool. It's a flying animal. I'm guessing they probably want that for exploration in this game, that you can move around on foot. Hopefully they will have the ability to have, you can use the elements to traverse better, where you can maybe do a little bit of fire flying, kind of gliding along the ground type thing. If you do get a glider staff, that you can potentially do stuff like that. Or I guess it's old enough that maybe is the glider staff stuff even in place for the air nomads. It's going to be hard to tell there, because it's, again, 7,000 years in the past is when this is set. So we have to be careful in a way to a certain degree when talking about this, when we say Fire Nation, Air Nomads, Earth Kingdom, Water Tribes, because we don't know for sure if any or all of these are officially formed as nations at this point. Likely not all of them are to a certain degree. It's an interesting one. But yeah, the animal, I'm guessing, will allow you to just kind of, properly explore, fly around, get up to the high places. I'm assuming if they want to go really crazy with the customization, they will allow you different animals. So like maybe there are ground animals that can, swim quite fast, as well as flying animals. So that's going to be kind of cool. And yeah, stuff like that, like in chat there, where it's like, yeah, have the air temples been built? Maybe only 1 or 2 of them have been built at this point in time. It's highly likely that there is maybe only one water tribe, like only the Northern Water Tribe. Is it really even known as that as such? Or is this disaster what eventually leads to the landscape being in a position to get to the Water Tribe? So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, we will be addressing the whole Stephen Yun thing, because the down here I have it here. Yeah, I have the listing that addresses this whole thing. That's our next topic, but I do want to cover the video game info first. So yeah, it's definitely exciting. Going through some of the information, these are quotes from the podcast, which has more information than the IGN article, but we will address both. So they're saying it's going to be a big budget open world action RPG. They note that they have this unusual dual funding, split funding kind of thing where Saber is the developer, but Paramount is going to be partially funding the game. So hopefully that gimmicky funding thing works out for them and allows them to actually get a really, really good game. But yeah, open world action RPG, I think exactly what everyone has always asked for is just like, yes. It's just about, is it actually going to be that? Is it actually going to deliver? That's the real question. Apparently, you know, they drop you into the world. You get to create your own bender. You can be who you want. We're not going to tie you down. You're going to start your own journey. But it feels a little contradictory about, like, they're not going to tie you down, but then if you're an avatar, you are very clearly set at a point in the cycle. So you have to be tied down to, like, a certain degree. But then, like, are you actually character creating the avatar or another character? Because in the IGN article, they note here that it puts players in the role of an all-new, never-before-seen avatar, thousands of years in the past. Dynamic combat alongside companions. So that's kind of interesting. And experience challenges and so on. So are you character customizing the companions or the avatar, both? I'm guessing, like, if you are the avatar, a certain amount of customization is going to be allowed. In that you can absolutely attribute a lot of historical things to the plot of this game, to the avatar of this era. And the idea is, does it matter if the avatar that you played as was, you know, it was a female character or a male character? Does it matter if they had, you know, black hair in your playthrough, or I played it with brown hair? You know, I started the game where my first element was fire versus you started it with earth. Once they lock in that the character's backstory is that they are a, let's say, fire avatar, they are fire in the cycle, that's fine to me. I just hope that they get the balance right of this character is not just a complete blank slate because it's a customizable, like, create your own thing, and that the avatar actually has a sense of, like, character, that they can actually be, you know, after this game we can tell stories involving this character that we don't play necessarily. So I think that's an interesting balance to get right about just some stuff customizable, but then story should also be a big part of Avatar, which they're also emphasizing here because they say it's set 7,000 years ago, an original story from Avatar Studios. So that's the big thing here, where, again, I don't mind if we maybe end up having to refer to this avatar as sort of like, you know, the unnamed Ice Age avatar or something like that. So long as we can, like, characterize them and be like, this was their personality, they were known for making choices like this, they were known to be a fire avatar, followed up by an air avatar, that sort of idea. Or I think probably for me the better option would be you play the character you create is the avatar's main companion. And so it's very much a case of, like, you start off with a duo, which is the sort of set in stone avatar, but then you have the customizable, like, completely customizable companion character. And you have them both from the start of the game to get across this idea that in combat you fight alongside companions. And then maybe the rest of your team avatar can be more set characters that you pick up along the game based on what areas that you actually go to. So that's kind of interesting. Just out of curiosity, do we know if the story of this game is canon? That to me is basically them saying it's canon without them saying it's canon. Them saying it's an original story from Avatar Studios, Mike and Brian. As far as we're aware, everything under Avatar Studios is meant to be canon. And I think that's the entire point of this game. Saying stuff like it's set 7,000 years ago, as in it's set 7,000 years ago in the canon of Avatar, and we are going to cover that idea. That's the kind of point. This is not a quote, but they just talked about it on the podcast, the idea of like, I think Dante said like, oh, we want to spend 100 hours in the game. And the response was sort of like, well, 100 hours is a lot, but you can deep dive and do all the side quests. It's pretty substantial. So I'm not sure if you can really read into it too much, given how early it is in production. Again, customization options once again. Apparently, this is an interesting one. You can wander around the Earth Kingdom, and you can go into Ba Sing Se. Now, Ba Sing Se, canonically, is one of the oldest cities in the Avatar world. So, it absolutely makes sense that it absolutely could be around 7,000 years ago. We know for sure it has a certain amount of walls 5,000 years ago. It's really just about like setting in place, is it a walled city in this era, or is it an underground city in this era? And then how advanced from that stage to the next stage actually is it? Because you sort of wonder in a way, the guy in the podcast, when he talked about this, when he said Ba Sing Se, does he say this because he knows Ba Sing Se is in the game? Or because it's just the first general Avatar city that came to mind when he was having the discussion? That's the kind of point here. Because of course, apart from Janet at one point bringing up the idea, right towards I think the end of the podcast, that like, wait, we might not know anything about this because it's so far in the past, and like I think she referenced Avatar 1 at that point. Were they talking about this as like he's properly seen stuff in the game or not? Because look, Ba Sing Se absolutely could be around. It's just, is it the Ba Sing Se we know? Who knows? That's the question. I'm going to guess, because it's such a notable city, they probably want it to be here, so I'm guessing it's probably there. Maybe we don't have the multiple layers of walls. Maybe we just have the first layer of walls or something like that. Maybe it's not the absolute mega city that it actually is. Maybe it's a case where like the underground is still in use, but the overground is starting to kind of take over as being the core of the city. I could see that being a unique dynamic where you still get the sort of, it's familiar because, okay, it's not the mega city we know it to be in the more modern eras, but it's absolutely still Ba Sing Se. But oh wait, here's what the catacombs were like when they were more properly still in use. That to me is an interesting concept, if that's what they do. The setup is that apparently a volcano explodes and sets forth an ice age. They made sure to clarify here very, very carefully. Like Janet like jumped in on this one immediately and was just like, wait. No one caused it, right? And they confirmed this, that yes, it is just a natural disaster. We're not trying to get across some sort of idea that like lava benders made this happen or anything like that. No, it just happened, and now it's a case of, how does the Avatar attempt to bring balance to the world that's going to be put out of world by this kind of mega natural disaster, with maybe the water tribes trying to do some bad stuff, which is very, very interesting to kind of do that, to actually just potentially commit to in a story, like truly making like the water tribe just like overall of this era the bad guys. I think that's kind of interesting to me. And to just really present the idea that like a lot of us know who know the other eras of Avatar, that like, yeah, it is not the case that the Fire Nation is just the evil nation in all eras, or it's not always just like the Earth Kingdom or the Fire Nation. That like, hey, the Water Tribes historically maybe did some bad stuff before they settled down in more modern eras. I think that's kind of cool to get. Yeah, new Avatar, of course, it's 7,000 years ago, of course. There will be a new villain. Will be interesting to see what they do. Early development, and they basically say 2027 at the earliest, but immediately 2028 was said, in addition to afterwards heavily clarifying this is a massive estimate just to say something at this point in time. Games are hard to make. It might not even be there. So immediately it's like, okay, we're 4 or 5 years away from this game, as in we will likely have 2, 3, 4 plus Avatar Studios animated projects out by the time we finally get this game. That sort of idea. Especially if it is like mid to late 2028 going into 2029. We're going to have a lot of other stuff before this. So it seems like it's an eternity away. But once we get to like the Aang movie coming out in 2026, it won't be as bad, because we won't only have a novel here, a comic there to get us through the content. We're going to have a movie to talk about. We're going to have a show to talk about. That whole idea. Will there be multiple villains? I'm assuming like this is going to be your main story villain, I guess, that we're talking about here. But if it is going to be a proper open world game where we get to explore the different nations, I'm assuming there's going to be villains all over the place as part of side quests. There's going to be someone in Ba Sing Se doing something, someone on some of those fire islands up to no good, that sort of idea. Let's see, aside from the waterbenders, who else benefits from the Ice Age? Yeah, I suppose it depends on the location of a lot of this stuff. I tried to think, like, a lot depends on where these volcanoes are. Like, are these volcanoes, like, up north and we basically almost get the formation of the Northern Water Tribe? Or are we already in or around Fire Islands and stuff like that where we are right now? Hard to properly tell, because I'm going to doubt that Brian, when he made this art piece, really was thinking too much about exact location on the map, and more wanted to just get across the concept of the game in a piece of art by having multiple volcanoes on screen and stuff like that. If this is maybe more up north, I'm kind of like, Firebenders, I guess, might have an okay time of things, just because at least they can control their body heat, at least if they have that skill. That could be a decent spot, but like potentially like large parts of the Earth Kingdom are going to be in a bad way. Maybe the airbenders of this era are going to be in a bad way. But airbenders can also regulate their body heat as well. So it's mostly just, yeah, I guess the earthbenders who might actually struggle with this one here. And even then, maybe the lava benders will be okay, if there are lava benders. So yeah, I'm excited for this. I think it's very cool, because just this piece of concept art, I think it needs to be noted kind of how significant this is. That we are getting a piece of concept art about a completely unknown time period in the Avatar world, 7,000 years ago, where we get a look at a new Avatar, potentially, new animal, new idea for this, and the idea that 4 to 5 years before this game comes out, we have a piece of concept art for the game. But we don't have an officially revealed image for the movie that's coming out in like 14 months. We don't have the proper announcement of the show that's meant to follow just a few months after that, theoretically. That's where the confusion is, and that, like, why did they feel okay with announcing the game like a million years in advance, but the animation stuff is like the most secretive stuff in the world, that we're not getting updates on it yet. That if not for that leaked image of the Aang movie, we don't know what's really going on. That's the kind of crazy thing here, in that what we're looking for over the next while, probably at like San Diego Comic-Con next year at the very least, concept art for the Aang movie, concept art for the Avatar After Korra. That's the exciting stuff, because this was a big announcement. This was heavily reported on across the internet. It's very early, but it was a big announcement about the Avatar game that people really, really want. And I have to hope that means that they're setting the stage to make bigger announcements going forward. Even the fact that they actually had news on the podcast, like this was effectively a news drop podcast talking about this, because they even talked about like some of the other games, like the fighting game on this one, and that was interesting, even though they didn't really show it off. It's still not the most amazing way to communicate, but that is the situation there. Now, I think we've all wanted to talk about this, but let's talk about the relatively recent piece of information about the 2026 Aang movie. So prior to this news, we got the news earlier on in the year that it's apparently working titled as Aang, The Last Airbender. This information here suggests that it's going to be called Lost Realm, and it remains the 2026 movie. Again, I think it was January 20th, 2026 was the new date that we had for this movie. Now, let's go through this for maybe those of you who are unaware of what was said on this copyright listing. And that's what it is. US copyright listing filing website. If you just search what Paramount has put up recently, or just search Lost Realm, you can find this listing. And you can see here, it's for a motion picture. Application title is for Lost Realm. Title Lost Realm by Paramount Animation. Some interesting details here. They're saying that the creation of the work began February 2023, which obviously we know Avatar Studios technically started 2 years before that. We actually know for a fact that they confirmed to us in mid-2022 at Comic-Con that the first movie is about Aang and Co. So they told us that the first movie was about Aang, and it's this movie, like 6, 7, 8 months before this, but it only started production here. I'm not going to read too much into this. Like there's probably some way, official production wise, where they can explain that it only started here, but I don't think that really matters. These are the two kind of important ones here. Date of anticipated completion of the Aang movie is November 2025. And then projected date of publication or release, as expected, matches up with the other information, January 2026. And this filing was done just a few weeks ago. Very end of September this year. So just last month that this was done. They at least when they filed this, were still committing to releasing the movie in January. That's very good to know that in the 6 or so months since the last update on this, it hasn't received another delay. That's positive. And then description of work. When I first saw that this was on the listing, I was like, oh, are we going to get something big here? And it's very vague. Years following the events of the beloved original series, Avatar, a new evil threatens the future of all 4 nations. Avatar Aang must rally his friends to defeat a new villain, the likes of which they've never seen before. Directed by Lauren Montgomery, co-directed by William Mata, starring Dave Bautista, Leon Kwan, Eric Nam, Roman Zaragoza, and brand new reveal here from this listing, Stephen Yeun. So, what's going on here? Straight away, the name that was confirmed that's not here is Jessica Matten, who is voicing Katara in the new movie. That's confirmed. So it's kind of weird that she wasn't included here, but okay. They've not put in, obviously, the full cast of the movie here, just some of the names they have here. So the big thing here comes down to a few things. The Jessica Matten thing is like, okay, fine, they didn't mention her. why is Dante Bosco not here, and then why is Stephen Yeun here? Again, they don't say who Stephen Yeun is voicing. We have nothing to suggest he is here to voice Wan again, even though that would be the way we know him as an Avatar actor, is for Avatar 1. We don't know that that's the case. He could be voicing a new character. That makes sense, because I don't think the only new character in this movie is going to be Dave Bautista as the new villain. The villain is probably going to have a lieutenant, the villain is going to have other characters, and the gang is probably going to be interacting with other characters as well. And that very much could be the case also. But then the other, again, and it's speculation that's come up, is that because Dante Bosco has not been confirmed to be the voice of Zuko in this movie, people are jumping to the conclusion that Stephen Yeun might be voicing Zuko in the movie. Which absolutely could be the case. But right now, I don't think there's any concrete information to suggest that here. And that's the situation here. I've seen some people reporting on this in a way that doesn't really feel representative of what it is, because all those reports that you've seen that like Stephen Yeun is the new voice of Zuko, Dante Bosco's not back for the movie and all that stuff. Literally, this is it. This is the source of that information, is Stephen Yeun is listed in this copyright listing as being part of the movie. It doesn't say anything beyond that. Now, I absolutely believe that he's part of the movie, because I don't see why they would lie about this or get this wrong. So that's my thoughts. And on the Avatar 1 thing, if he is here, theoretically, to voice Wan, I find it absolutely crazy that they would spoil that he's in the movie in any way. Like, imagine this, that like, we're like, oh, Wan's in the movie when it finally comes out, but oh, the copyright listing from like a year ago spoiled it. That's a really crazy kind of idea to have here. So, there's absolutely, they could do some crazy Avatar state thing with Aang where we go back to Wan. But I don't think they're highlighting that here like that. So, at least to me, I think he's either a new character, or there maybe is the chance he is Zuko. But I need to see a piece of information that actually links him to Zuko, because I'm not seeing it right now. And then, again, I think there's a lot of confusion about this, but again, as far as I'm aware, I don't believe Dante Bosco has actually been officially confirmed for this movie. I know Avatar News did put out a big article saying that this was the case, and it was a massive rumor report from the casting that apparently he is the only member of like the gang who is coming back to reprise the role. Everyone else is going to get recast. But since then, I don't think there's actually been a report of that. When the other actors got announced, some places reporting on this included Dante Bosco. But I think a lot of the people who then actually told us about what was actually said at the event, I don't believe they actually on stage said Dante Bosco's back. Because if they did, he would be talking about that on the podcast. Or at least, he'd be confirming that on the podcast. He won't talk about it, obviously. But if he was officially announced, they'd be mentioning it, I think, as well. And so, I don't know what the full situation is overall here. But I also would say that we've already had different voices for Zuko. We had someone else voicing older Zuko in Korra, so in my mind, it's not really something to get super upset over, because they're going to replace everyone else, basically. And that makes a lot of sense overall. So we'll see what happens here overall. Obviously, if they eventually do get around to maybe confirming this as potentially a big casting announcement that Stephen Yeun maybe is voicing adult Zuko in the movie, that's a kind of that's an interesting announcement. And I guess it kind of highlights that, I guess, Dante Bosco's kind of role within the franchise is kind of on the podcast, is to be that in that host position with Janet Varney, in the same way that she's basically said that she, I guess, won't be returning to voice Korra. We'll see how some of this stuff goes. In terms of the announcements, but again, it's like a lot of this stuff. It's like, it's fine, because when you take this to extremes, it's like, oh, get Zach Talleyrand back in to voice Aang, and it's like, he hasn't done any voice acting in years. That is just getting someone just for the sake of it, effectively. And I think they're putting in the effort to do this right overall. But yeah, they need to put out concrete information. That's the big thing, I think, coming out of a lot of this information. Like, it's kind of exciting that we had 3 big things to talk about here. A little bit of Avatar Studios news about a big video game, and a big publishing announcement. But then you go through it, and it's like, the panel was very badly communicated when it comes to information. Sure, they got the main announcement out there quite clearly, but if you wanted to know what happened at the rest of the panel, it was a bit of a disaster. Because again, who did they have in the panel? It was Cara O'Neill, of course. Dark Horse. Makes sense. They had Joan Hilty. I have no idea if she said anything at the panel. No clue. Why on earth was Rachel Silverstein at the panel? I have no idea. Did she say anything? Like, to a certain degree, at what point in the panel would we turn to Rachel Silverstein to talk about stuff? I just don't get that. Unless it's just being not reported that she actually maybe said something, that she is involved in something, but I didn't hear anything. By all accounts, Randy Rabai, like, what did he talk about? I'm a little bit more understanding there, because, like, look, the Roku novel came out a few months ago. They've already announced the next one. They're in a weird spot where they don't have the other info just yet. But okay, he's there. And then you have the representative from Webtoons, who... Did they say anything about new content? I don't think they did, because I guess that would have been news if it was there. But who knows? And then Magpie had a tiny bit of information, but then they didn't post it, even though it's like official information. Even the stuff about the AAA Avatar game was kind of weird, because they did this kind of half announcement where they gave IGN the exclusive with kind of like half of the information, and then the other half of the information was for like a bunch of days behind a paywall for the premium podcast. And even then, we had to wait for the video version of the podcast to actually get the news, which was the concept art. And then, of course, our first update on the movie that's coming out the first month of 2026 comes from a copyright listing. We are scraping for information here. When's the first teaser for the movie? We have no idea whatsoever. But I'm guessing, obviously at the very least, by San Diego Comic-Con next year, so like July next year, I'm guessing we'll be talking about this, and they'll at least have something there or in or around there to talk about. But then there's also CinemaCon 2025, which is earlier in the year. It's either February or March, I forget. They are highly likely to probably have this movie there, and at the very least, they will probably show a clip from this movie at CinemaCon early next year. We will probably get a report about that, but we might not see the trailer. That's often what happens at CinemaCon. Sometimes they actually put the trailer out. Sometimes they don't. I don't know. But yeah, the big problem with this movie is that we don't have one. We still don't have an official title. We don't know what the name of this movie is. That's a real problem, especially because, like, can we actually talk about that here? We already have the leaked poster. like, yes, but also at the same time, because it was leaked, we actually don't know, like, officially what was that image. Like, is that a poster? Is it just a piece of, like, concept art? Because again, it was a while ago that we got that image now. I think it was just a teaser image giving you a sense for what it is. It's not quite the poster because there was no title on it or anything like that. We were lucky to have even seen it. But we have to address the movie. Like, I think universally, people don't like Aang the Last Airbender as the title. I haven't really seen anyone go to bat for this as the title. This working title hasn't really done it for people. It's weird that the application is literally just for Lost Realm. Because is there any chance this movie actually releases in 2026 and we're all talking about how we're going to see literally just the movie called Lost Realm? Oh, and by the way, it's an Avatar movie. Like, I can see them maybe doing like Aang the Last Airbender hyphen Lost Realm. That makes sense. And then there's always the weirdness around, are we allowed to use Avatar? Can we say Avatar like in the title? Are we allowed to do that? Like Legend of Aang Lost Realm, I think that could be something that's decent. Avatar Legends Lost Realm. I think this is a lot of the branding stuff that they're really trying to work out. Is what they're, to a certain degree, legally allowed to do, but also what makes them clearly stand out that this is Nickelodeon Avatar versus Blue People Avatar. Given that I believe the next Blue People Avatar movie is also basically scheduled for the same time of the year, so they might actually have to be super clear about that. And so the idea is, what are we doing with the franchise? Like, is Aang the most recognizable thing in the franchise, so that name is required in the title? Is it The Last Airbender that specifically everyone really, really knows? Or do you have to come up with some weird combination that involves all of them to get the point across? Very clearly, it seems like they want the title to be something representing the idea of a place lost to time or whatever that just hasn't been found in a long time. Because the other rumored title was like Hidden Kingdom, which is effectively the same thing, just with different words. So that's the interesting thing. So yeah, one thing is that it seems like they definitely can't just be like Avatar subtitle. I'm guessing if they really had to, they probably could be like Avatar The Last Airbender Lost Realm. They could do Aang The Last Airbender Lost Realm. They could do Avatar Legends, but I don't know. Do people associate that just yet with what we were about here? So, like what's going to get people to go to the movie? And I think you have to be like, I think you need to use the word Airbender. I think you need to use Aang to just remind people that after all these years, if you watch that show, that Nickelodeon show, book 1, 2, and 3, it's this guy who's back. Aang, the Airbender, he's back. You kind of have to do that. And that's the really awkward thing. Because then all of a sudden, they're planning 3 movies, and apparently, I don't think we know for sure, but apparently like the second movie might not be like about like Aang, it might be about a different Avatar. What do you do then? Because all of a sudden, if you're in a different era, it doesn't make any sense to call it The Last Airbender because you have airbenders. Like, you can't do a Korra thing and call it The Last Airbender because there are other airbenders. You can't use Aang, and then it's like, okay, for a Korra thing, you can just use Legend of Korra. But for anything else, and then this gets into, like, say, the show, the character, the Avatar after Korra, are we just going with Legend of that character's name? Or are we doing something different? This is the problem that we've had for a really long time now, is they need to figure this out. Pretty badly, they need to figure out what we're actually doing. I think they can pretty much get away with anything for the first movie, because it's an Aang movie. But anything else is going to be super messy, I think, to deal with here. And this is why they need to, I think, probably just commit to like Avatar Legends, Aang, and the Lost Realm or something like that. I'll actually just write that down, like just as a thing to just be like, you know, Avatar Legends. Like, that feels cleanish, where you're telling people going into this thing that this is kind of what the Avatar franchise is. That it's Avatar. It's Avatar Legends. So the franchise is multi-generational. Will be about different avatars. And this specific one is Avatar Aang. And the plot's about a lost realm. It's tough, but I think that's something along the lines of what you need to do with this. And that way, if you need to, you can be like Avatar Legend. And you could do that. Something that really rolls off the tongue like this for maybe movie 2. Yeah, that is the problem. Is that the franchise ultimately kind of, I suppose its main title that's most consistent is probably The Last Airbender, but in most things, eras of Avatar, this is not going to make any sense. So obviously these are just speculation. Obviously what it says here, Lost Realm is what they're leaning towards. I don't know what to make of this. It's still far enough away where I'm guessing they're absolutely, I don't think, they're not locked in at that. But I would take this to be Lost Realm probably is going to be in the title. That whatever way they sort out the just general marketing of what the franchise is called, it's going to be that, Aang, Lost Realm. I don't know what they're going to do otherwise. Let's see. Does Lost Realm mean that there is a world separate from the human and spirit world? I might need to look it up, but again, I'm pretty sure the word realm doesn't necessarily mean it's an entirely different plane of existence. I think in most fantasy stuff like that, it often gets used like that, but it is... Like, realm is just sort of a word that means effectively the same as, like, place or kingdom. Like, you know, the Earth realm. It's the realm of the Earthbenders, you know. You can call it that. It's just kind of a fancier word to a certain degree. Obviously, the spirit world is a realm, technically. But obviously it's not really lost, because Aang's been there, obviously. So I'm assuming that what this means is, like, yeah, Lost Kingdom is effectively what they're referring to this as. I'm guessing just for confusion with Earth Kingdom, they changed it to Realm. Because I think when you say Kingdom in Avatar, you go to Earth Kingdom. And for a title of a movie, you don't want that confusion. So they went with Realm. That's sort of the idea that we're talking about here. And the question is obviously, like, where are these people going to come from? Because obviously every plot point over the last, like, year, 2 years in Avatar has been something is happening on a secret island, either as part of the Fire Nation chain of islands or the ones that are, like, in between the Fire Nation and the Earth Kingdom. Just a lot of mysterious stuff happening there in all those islands overall. So are we going there? Or are we maybe going to go to a different part of the map? You know, something like that. That's kind of an interesting maybe thing to talk about overall. Is it just, is it another secret island plot? I don't know. But Lost Realm, because like, is there even a place like anywhere like in like the Earth Kingdom where you could really hide a whole group of people? I don't really know. What's the description say again? A new evil threatens the future of all four nations. It's a new villain, the likes of which they've never seen before. So this is probably the most interesting thing from this. Is like, what does that mean? Because, okay, Aang has faced, you know, benders. He's faced like a combustion bender. So he's faced Combustion Man. So he's faced benders with certain special abilities. So one obvious thing is it is a bending ability Aang has never seen before. So there's the opportunity to do something new there, a completely new form of bending potentially, or just one he's never seen. Like, technically, I suppose Aang never quite fought a spirit. So I think, like I said in my video covering this, a spirit enhanced or morphed character feels like maybe the option to go with here. To really address that concept in like the Aang era and have Aang effectively face effectively an avatar-like being to a certain degree, which is what like the idea of a human and the spirit being kind of morphed together here, where you have the power boost of a spirit enhancing theoretically someone with bending abilities. That's kind of an interesting one, where like, what if it is a group of people who are like deeply spiritual and maybe they've got in good with a spirit or a group of spirits, and they've created a situation where they're fine with people jumping inside them, and we get sort of a, you know, like a Tokuga type thing, where maybe someone has trained with this spirit so that they can stay inside them for a pretty long time, and so it's Avatar-esque, but obviously we can't really do bonded forever thing, because that has to be sort of exclusive to the Avatar and the little bit while we had the Dark Avatar, of course. But I think something along the lines of, you know, a spirit boosted character sounds interesting. Like, thinking about like False Avatar Yoon, Tokuga, that sort of idea, and like Wan with Rava combining in harmonic convergence. And then I'm guessing they do probably want to do stuff with spirits in general. Because again, a lot of people have this kind of weird thing of like, oh, the spirit stuff that they did in Avatar is like really, really good, and then all the spirit stuff they did in Korra is bad, when it's like, I think Korra told us like a lot more about spirits that's arguably like more interesting when it comes to like utilizing them in stories than Avatar did. Avatar was just like, spirits are a mystery, even though they're like the second kind of like race of beings in Avatar. That like we should use them, and it's a bit weird to keep them overly mysterious when it also is like a part of the balance of the world, is like dealing with spirits and attempting to, I think, achieve some sort of a balance between the two of them. So I've definitely never subscribed to the idea that like we need to keep the mystery of spirits at all costs. And I'm like, no, we need to demystify the spirits at all costs and delve into the dynamics, basically, a lot more, and really cover that more, characterize them. I want to see stuff that is like a spirit who is effectively like a main character, because that's part of why like Beginnings is so interesting. Is Rava is a character. She's not just a spirit who facilitates like power boosts and stuff like that. She gets to be a proper character. Ai is interesting. And then some of the other spirits who talk are interesting, but I think we want to avoid almost like the co-trap of every spirit is just this kind of sinister, lives in a cave spirit and just says mysterious things. That can't be every spirit. That's fine to do every once in a while, to have a glowworm, but you have to balance it out. And so that's why the likes of like a Wan Shi Tong is a super interesting character who, by the nature of the type of spirit he is, kind of has to interact with spirits, but has often had like bad dynamics with humans and stuff like that. It's interesting overall. Yeah, spirits is where Avatar, I think, really has the real opportunity to do like incredibly new and unique things, because they really haven't been utilized all that much kind of across the franchise, to the point where like I think a lot of the spirit stuff they did in the comics is super interesting and unique. Old Iron Lady Tianhai I thought was probably some of the best spirit dynamic exploration that we've kind of seen overall. The Kimura Kage stuff in Smoke and Shadow, really, really good. That's what I'm hoping for. Wan Shi Tong redemption arc in the Earth Avatar series. Yep. The setup is there. We know from the Wan Shi Tong Adventure Guide he's open to giving humanity another chance. So in the Korra era or the era after, he's gonna try again. So that's gonna be pretty exciting. I think post Korra they know what spirits are. Absolutely. I think they solidified what they're mostly doing with spirits. They just need to use them now going forward. And we were building on some sort of an arc with Korra, and then of course the main Korra comic stopped. Because of course we have like that dragon eel spirit as like sort of a spirit representative. That's kind of dealing with Korra, and we're seeing humans interact with them, with humans, and that's Korra's big thing. She's brought the spirits back into the world, and now, are we going to see anything happen there? Is she going to be able to create a balance or not? And then, I suppose most interestingly, when it comes to like the new series, the Earth Avatar series, is what is that dynamic with humans and spirits going to be like as we switch to a different era? What is Korra's legacy when it comes to, she's brought the spirits back, but did she facilitate peace between them, or is there still issues, or did it go wrong? That's the big thing here. Because we know how it ended up in beginnings with spirits in the physical world. Lion turtles kind of having to jump in to save the day to a certain degree. That's an interesting concept. So, yeah, likes of which they've never seen before. And yeah, apart from avatars, they've never seen spirit-enhanced people, basically. So, there's that. I'm guessing with them saying it's a villain, it's probably not just directly, like, it's a spirit. But who knows? Maybe they might do something like that, where, like, Dave Bautista is playing some crazy spirit. And then Stephen Yeun is like the human that like is dealing with that spirit, and they do some sort of an interesting thing there. That could be quite nice to see. And then a lot depends, like we don't even really know specifically like what nation, like where's this going to take place. I'm guessing the whole Lost Realm thing means that we will see this new location wherever it ends up being. And we'll set stuff there, but we're going to see like Proto Republic City, I guess, where whatever the situation is, where like Cranefish Town is just on the verge of becoming Republic City or something like that. That's kind of an interesting thing here. Spirits don't get involved in human politics. Yes, but that's where you get the interesting thing where certain spirits do like to make a deal with a spirit, where maybe in exchange for the power of a spirit and merging with someone for a while, it's you can do what you want with that power, but you are getting me something, giving me something. We don't know. That potential motivation could be quite interesting. Though, what I would say about that, I'm pretty sure that's the Chanyu plot setup from Realms Collide, because if you were to have me picture in my head who's Dave Bautista playing, I'm probably picturing Chanyu from the Realms Collide game, honestly. Someone who looks like that, is potentially that big and powerful. Maybe that's just because I know Dave Bautista mainly from wrestling, maybe more so than his kind of more recent kind of acting career, mostly. Whereas, no, I think he's really well regarded as an actor these days. So like he it's not necessarily the case he has to play some sort of a big brute type character. He could be playing a much more nuanced character. So it's difficult to call exactly with that side of things. So that's interesting. Years following, and again in relation to this, rumors, as far as we're aware from like casting information, suggest that Aang's going to be 24 in the movie. So we're basically 8-9 years. It depends on where you view the comics as having got up to, but it's going to be like 8-9 years after where the comics have gotten up to. Effectively, 12-11 years after the end of the series. So in relation to like some of the bigger kind of plot points, it's probably, I've calculated this before, it's one of those situations where it's either going to be like the movie ends and Katara's pregnant, or Boomy has just recently been born. I'm going to assume that we'll probably go into the movie without like Boomy not being born, but maybe like begin to set the stage for that at the end as like a kind of fun moment overall. Age rating that people are suggesting here. I'm pretty sure Transformers 1, when I saw it, at least here, was PG. Just straight PG. So I'm guessing Avatar will probably aim for that. Maybe the kind of PG-13, 12s, whatever the rating is. Obviously nothing more than that. Depends on what they're really going for here. Because apparently like the plan for the studio is going to be that like they're maybe going to have certain smaller projects that will be like kids shows, but then they'll have stuff that appeals more to the older fans. And I think part of the reason they're doing this is to be a little bit of a nostalgia movie type thing for kind of older fans. So I don't know, I see it as just like they'll use the levels effectively that they used in Korra and just apply it to ATLA characters because they're older now. And that's kind of what they're going to go for, that this is like what Avatar can do while still keeping it kind of open for everyone. And Korra did some pretty crazy things. So like I wouldn't look down on that like at all, really. Like with Avatar, like language isn't necessarily a thing that like I really associate as kind of really coming into play. It's more of probably like, for the most part, it's probably violence level that's really the thing in Avatar that we're talking about here. And it's about like when we have the bending fights, is a character allowed to get burned by a firebending attack? Are they allowed to, get winded, cut by an earth shard or something like that? Obviously, if you take it to crazy degrees, you could do like crazy mature Avatar violence if you want to go down that road. Like some of the novels have definitely had descriptions of fights that are very, very brutal with like some crazy stuff happening. And I don't think they're even probably going to go that far overall. Like, what was it? Was it, it was Rise of Kyoshi. Rangi in the Leitai arena thing, where she absolutely like annihilates a guy's leg and like just like breaks it in like a million places, or something along those lines. I forget the exact details, but she does something crazy and it's just hand to hand. And I'm like, ooh, I don't think we're maybe going to show that in animation, but you can do that in a novel because it's just a description. But as far as Korra went, type stuff is what I'm assuming we're going to be able to do. Maybe because it's a movie, they might like push it like a little bit for like a big moment, but we gotta wait and see, of course. But I also feel like part of the charm of Avatar is that they avoid going needlessly dark. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it probably is stuff like that where like if Sokka is going to use his sword, he can't cut anyone. That sort of idea. Um, but then we also need to address just like I've talked about this a few times on live streams, but just like what type of movie are we talking about here? Like I've mentioned this a few times before, but like, do we want a mostly kind of nostalgia focused movie here, where we do just kind of want to see the characters in animation for the first time in a while, just taking out groups of bad guys, just in their primes. Each character gets their spotlight moment where they get to do their bending, or Sokka does his like tactical leadership, or non-bender fighting stuff, and they just go all out. And the plot is nice, best we can be, but it's a movie villain. We just build up to like the big fights, and then have some of those fun character kind of moment dynamics where like we turn the corner and boom, here's Ty Lee. Oh, look over here, it's Suki. And we really emphasize that like, oh look, it's the characters. We're actually going to go through and show you a lot of that stuff because we know you want to see the characters older. Or are they really just going to go for, no, we just want to make a really good movie that happens to be an older Aang movie. Because I think you can do it in a way where it's not just sort of like nostalgia baiting. Like you can do it where it is just you're giving fans what they want, but it's also gonna do well for the movie, that sort of thing. Because it is that weird situation where it's been long enough to where people are desperate for new Avatar content. Like the comics ultimately haven't really been enough for people, and people are really going to be wanting that stuff. They need to kind of get it right. Because it's one of those things where like if we come out of this movie and they don't, for instance, do something like, say, confirm some of the ships. Like, for instance, say if we get out of the movie and like Suki's not in it. Potentially May isn't in the movie either. There's no mention of Azula or anything like that. There's no like mention really of anyone having kids, who's married or not, and they don't do that within the movie. I think you are probably going to have some people pretty disappointed if you don't hit on certain beats. And so a lot of people are going to say that like, oh, I don't want it to be a nostalgia movie. But then you say, well, okay, that means they're not going to do this, this, and this. And they're like, no, wait, I wanted that. Like, I wanted Azula in the movie. I wanted May in the movie. And it's like, which is it? Because, like it says in chat there, the movie's only going to be like 90 minutes, probably 100 minutes at the absolute most. And they have to do basically a reintroduction to all of these characters, a lot of main characters, a new character, a new location, and all this other stuff. they have to really decide what they want to do here, and what their focus is and kind of isn't really overall. So it's a tricky one, because say like Transformers 1, I'm not sure how many people have seen it. I did. I think it's a really good movie. Is it perfect? No, because it's a very broad plot trying to tell the origin of Optimus and Megatron from their initial kind of where they are, not known as Optimus and Megatron, to getting to that point, and do it in one movie. Get to the point where at the end we basically have Autobots versus Decepticons. I think they did a pretty good job, but I also would have appreciated it if that was actually like a 26 episode series, because that's one of the more interesting plot elements of Transformers, is seeing that kind of transition and not rushing to the armies fighting type thing overall, and really getting more into the kind of weeds and what's actually going on. In that it did feel like they kind of had to rush through quite a few things, and that like the big lore was like the 13 primes, but like in the movie they named maybe like 3 or 4 of them. Sure, but they, through like other material like trading cards and stuff like that, they named who the other ones were. We knew it from like aligned Transformers continuity who they were, but a lot of key characters that they didn't really get a chance to kind of go into. And it's going to be a pretty similar thing, I'm guessing, for this movie. Like Transformers 1 had your core lineup of effectively Optimus, aka like Orion, Megatron under his kind of code name effectively, Alita 1, and Bumblebee. Basically, you had those 4 main characters, with Sentinel Prime being your like antagonist, basically. Spoilers, I suppose. And those 5 characters, and then there was all this other elements, and like there were some other kind of characters as well. And I was pretty happy with Optimus and Megatron, even though again it could have used more time. Alita had a pretty okay arc. Bumblebee didn't really get an arc, so he was mostly comic relief, and so you kind of fear for stuff like that in a movie type setting of like Sokka. Is Sokka going to get a chance to shine, or is Sokka just going to be comic relief in the movie? Like, there's little bits and pieces like that where you would say, like, across all the comics we've had so far, Sokka maybe hasn't had a giant arc. He's had some nice moments, but he's never maybe been the focus. So that's the interesting dynamic here. It's like we're excited for the movie, but also in a way have to set expectations because it's just a movie. It's like it's 4 and a bit episodes of animation. That's what we're getting here. 4 episodes effectively. Maybe 5 if they make it a slightly longer than usual animated movie. That like what can we do in that time while, like I said, doing all that stuff of like accepting that it's effectively the relaunch of the franchise, so there's going to be a lot of kind of reintroduction type stuff, while also telling its own plot and maybe setting up future content as well. Cabbage Merchant in the movie. I'm assuming they probably will throw him in there somewhere. Am I misremembering the Aang Katara would be the lead characters and the rest supporting? This is the casting information that is also where we have the ages of the characters from. The casting call suggested that Aang and Katara are like the leads, with Sokka and Toph being the kind of secondary characters. Again, I'm pretty sure that this is where Zuko, because we had the whole Dante Bosco's returning rumor, I don't think we had this the status of Zuko when it comes to the movie. So that's the way it was suggested, is that it's an Aang and Katara led movie, which I think makes sense because like what's the plot again? Avatar Aang must rally his friends, which I take that to be that a little bit of the plot of this movie is that Team Avatar, I'm not going to say they've broken up, but they obviously have their own lives. They don't just always hang out next to each other at all times for like, 10 years in a row type thing. They're off doing their own things. We've seen this already in the comics. So for a big threat, Aang's going to have to basically reunite Team Avatar for a mission. Now the assumption is that Aang and Katara are going to be in basically the same position. That even if maybe when we jump into the movie, Aang's off doing something by himself, he knows where Katara is straight away, and they might need to find where, Toph and Sokka are, and, they know where Zuko is, I'm guessing, unless he's known to constantly leave the throne abandoned or whatever. But, they're going to know where everyone is to group them all together, which I guess could make for a kind of fun sequence here of like doing effectively the reintroduction of the characters. So that's kind of interesting. Will we have Chief Sokka yet? That's interesting. Yeah. Like we're like what 8 years or something like that after North and South. Would he have taken over yet? And then I forget the details here, but is he council first then chief, or is it chief then council? I'm pretty sure it's chief then council. I have to look that up again. We know so little about Sokka post series, so they might do that. They might not. It's an interesting one. To see what way they do it. Yeah, it's council then chief, isn't it? Because doesn't Tenzin refer to it as like Chief Sokka was there during the Red Lotus attack to steal Korra, and we got the big fight that we never really got to see. I think that's the dynamic that we have. And then, yeah, Toph and the police force, is that in place yet? How far along is Cranefish into Republic City? That whole idea. Yeah, it's exciting. We're getting there with the information. Like, even though there's weirdness, I think, about a lot of this information, the fact that, like, this listing exists is positive. The fact that they're announcing a AAA Avatar game, stuff is building up. They're talking about publishing ramping up. We know from news from earlier in the year, of course, the big merchandise line from Jazzwares, I believe it was, that's planned for next year as well. It's all going to happen eventually. It's just, when are the first kind of dominoes going to fall? Like what is the first significant piece of information about Avatar animation actually going to be? That's what I find it very difficult to predict. Like, is a poster or a teaser just going to drop out of nowhere for this movie? Or are we going to have to maybe wait until San Diego Comic-Con and a potential Avatar Studios panel, and they announce the movie properly and the first series and maybe tease other stuff? We don't know. Will there be a Zuko movie? We don't know. Zuko movie was one of the rumored projects, but those rumors are getting to be quite old at this point. And based on stuff like this, where apparently they're saying that work on this movie began, say, like 2023, most of our rumors are from pre this date. Like, well pre this date. So I think it's very difficult to call if any of those rumors are really valid anymore. I think more recent information suggests that the movies are potentially about different avatars, but I don't even know if that's necessarily confirmed. We know there are 3 movies, and I think we know for sure the movies are not like, it's not a trilogy of movies. Like, this Aang movie is not a part 1 that the second movie will pick up from, at least as far as I'm aware. They are going to be basically about separate things. We just don't know what the full situation is. And who knows, since they said that, it might even be different. So, yeah. And then, yeah, there's that. That's the other thing here, is that we do have a few kind of big anniversaries coming up. What is it? December this year is 10 years celebrating the end of Korra. So that's like, December 2020, sorry, December 2014 to December 2024. That's a notable one because 10 years since the last piece of Avatar animation. That's notable. And then, February 2025 is going to be 20 years of the start of Avatar in animation. So we're reaching some key milestones here where it comes to like, okay, it's been a really long time since the last stuff. It's been a really long time since the start of it. When are we actually going to do stuff? How many projects are in production? If you piece all the rumors together, there's like, what, 3 movies? Are all 3 movies in production at the same time? We don't know. But anyway, 3 movies, at least 1 series, the Earth Avatar series, obviously. Apparently some sort of a kid series as well. I don't know if that rumor really has much stuff going on with it. So that at least puts it as like, what, 4, 5, maybe 6 projects. And then there's probably a lot more that they have in earlier stages of production as they're kind of planning out what to do. Not to mention when it comes to like series, we don't really know what the situation is when it comes to like seasons, like what way they're going to be broken down in that way and how many episodes per season. That's a big thing. At the very least, we probably assume that if they get confirmed for a series, they know what they're doing ahead of time. They have the confidence to just decide straight away at the beginning, this series, we are planning to run it for 3 15-episode seasons or whatever they end up being. Rather and avoiding the kind of Korra situation where they are kind of slowly confirming the seasons as they go. That's the hopeful production benefit that Avatar Studios gets because they have the full confidence, apparently, of Paramount. They can just have full knowledge of where they're going. And then, beyond, I would say probably the first... I'm going to guess beyond the first probably 2 or 3 projects, they probably are waiting to see how things go. It seems like they're all in on Avatar, so they're pretty confident, but I suppose the sort of 3 to 5 projects maybe turning into 10 projects probably will depend on how things go with the first movie and series. And then, yeah, that's probably the big fear when it comes to the series is episode count. I think is becoming a major problem with like most shows these days. I don't really know exactly like why it's necessarily kind of happening this way, but it just feels like for whatever reason we're getting less episodes of everything and less time. In that, like, I don't know, at least to me, like, maybe it'll be more interesting, like, when we get some announcements about, like, how many episodes the first season of the animation is planned to be. But if they announce it and it's, like, it's a 6-episode, like, limited series and the episodes are only, like, maybe, like, 22 to 24 minutes long or something like that, it's a little bit like, okay, I trust that you'll do something good, but it's like, we need some time here. Because I've always said to me that my thing with Korra is I really like Korra, but Korra's seasons needed a few more episodes. Like, a few more episodes, middle ground between the 12 to 14 and the 20 that Avatar had is kind of what's required. So that's why I kind of said 15 as a, like, I think I'd be pretty happy with 15 episode seasons, but I don't know. And then, yeah, time time is also the big thing of like, if it's 8 episodes but they're like 35 to 40 minutes, that's pretty good for animation, because then we're talking about it's like actually quite a lot of content. But if it's only like 8 22-minute episodes, that's a bit not great. So we have to wait and see what happens here, because especially on on Star Wars, I would say that's a big thing for Star Wars, is that I think it's been a consistent complaint with a lot of the shows, is that it's a weird episode count and it's a weird minutes per episode thing on those shows. How would I feel if the gang got 3 or 4 90-minute movies all released within 2 years? If that is the plan for it, I'd be kind of up for it, but I struggle to kind of, in my head, imagine what like multiple Avatar movies really looks like. I'm just barely getting to the point where like, wow, in like a year, we're gonna be, sitting down or preparing to, get ready for an Avatar animated movie in the cinema. That's a crazy concept to me. So I can't really imagine like loads of movies back to back to back. A lot depends on what the strategy for Avatar Studios is. If the first 2 projects, as we know, are Aang movie and then Avatar After Korra series, you're doing your established stuff and you're doing your moving the franchise forward. I think you're going to need a project that covers some of the backstory stuff. And so in my mind, like maybe the second movie probably should be like a Kyoshi style thing, or a new Avatar that's in the past, something along those lines. Because I think they really need to lean the franchise into the idea that it is a flexible franchise where you can switch up eras, and that there are big stories to be told with a variety of different characters. I think we need to avoid the Star Wars problem like at all costs, which is locking the fandom effectively into feeling like, in that case, Star Wars can only be these 1 or 2 things, and that everything new gets absolutely like obliterated, because they've very much leaned into, oh, it can only be this or that. So to me, sooner rather than later, I'd be very much open to the idea that, yeah, the first couple of projects probably should all be set in different eras to just get across that idea for Avatar. And that's why, like, especially on the channel, it's why I always put so much attention into like really highlighting, like, I'm always talking about what era we're in, to really highlight that it's not just about Aang. And so like when we talk about, say, Fire Nation, it's like, remember, the Fire Nation's not evil in this era, because that's viewing it from a completely 100-Year War era kind of ATLA perspective. That whole idea, and I think that's what they want to do, is that they want to have the Avatar universe be a sandbox where that can happen. Any updates on Funko Pops or figures and merch? We have not had Funko Pop information for a very long time. There were rumors, like, I think at some point last year, about like some sort of like fancy versions for like the main characters. We've not seen anything about that. So I have no idea what the situation is with Funko Pops. Merch, apart from the scattered bits and pieces that we get usually every year, there is a big Avatar Jazzwares toy line coming out at some point. I think the plan is for next year. By the sounds of things, it is going to be like, this is the proper big Avatar toy line, where they properly partner up. They're making Jazzwares like the main, what do they say, master licensor for Avatar when it comes to like toys and variety of other things. I think like cosplay stuff as well is what they're doing, costumes. That will be big. whenever it happens. Now, is the quality going to be good? We have to see what the figures look like. We have to see what the scope is, because I'm worried they're just going to do another ATLA toy line instead of basically an Avatar Legends toy line. Whereas I think if they jump again in with the merchandise and it is Avatar and Korra stuff and Kyoshi and more, that's kind of what we need. So we'll see what happens overall. And then, who knows, maybe that also is just the Aang movie line. We just don't know for sure. But yeah, merch, I think we can all probably agree, merch has been pretty much non-existent this year. It's not that there's been nothing, but compared to other years, like, none of the typical places that would do toy lines like have anything. A lot of the stuff that did, like, say last year or the year before, did a wave 1. I haven't seen wave 2s of like anything. Any of these kind of like figures, like let me show you something here. Say these figures, which I really like. They did a wave 1. I have no clue if they're doing a wave 2. Those kind of blind box figures. No clue. There's those other chibi figures that they did, and that was wave 1. They didn't do anything more. That's the weirdness going on, which to me is a sign that a lot of the companies doing merchandise for Avatar in the background probably are preparing for Avatar Studios stuff. Now, what merch are we necessarily talking about? I'm not really sure. Like, are we just going to get like tons of merch about the Aang movie, and like we're just going to immediately straight away have figures in like adult Aang, adult Katara figures, that sort of thing? I'm not really sure. Is merch valuable for something without an active cartoon? It's an interesting point, because what they seem to be like, a lot depends on what they actually end up doing with the merchandise line. But the idea for it, I guess, is that they want to have an active merchandise line so that when the Avatar Studios stuff comes out, and then more Avatar Studios comes out, rather than having a specific merch line for potentially like each project, it maybe is just an Avatar merch line that the new waves of it as it comes out is just in relation to the new content. That's the hope for me. So that way it starts off as theoretically a retro toy line, effectively, where you can have Avatar and Korra and Chronicles of the Avatar characters in the toy line. But then you have your merch line in place for when the Aang movie drops, and then all of a sudden wave 3 is just adult Aang, adult Katara, the new villain from the movie, that sort of thing. That's I think part of the idea there, because they know there is nostalgia and interest in Avatar, and like a merch line, especially if they market it well. And especially if they are going to market the new content well, you could definitely get people invested in merch by like doing a good merch line ahead of the Avatar Studios stuff, and especially if they communicate that it'll all be there. A lot depends on what it is, though. Like, is it going to be a kids line, or are they going to aim more for collectors? Because that's kind of probably what we want. We want that sort of Star Wars kind of / Marvel style line where it is less that new movies get their own line, and it is more that waves in those lines come out in relation to the movies. Maybe they just want to do that for Avatar. Don't really know. But in that interview in that magazine where they talked about merchandise, they definitely highlighted that they view Avatar as being a big property for them, that they feel a toy line would very much help. Like TMNT, it feels like is very much like it has a popular toy line, so it's a major part of its franchise. Avatar hasn't quite ever had that because they've never timed the toy line correctly, and I completely understand any fear that like if they do a toy line in mid 2025, 6 months before the movie, that doesn't sound great. But if it's only a few months beforehand, that's a bit better. And it opens the door to the idea of like, who knows, maybe we'll get some information via toy leaks. That would be kind of cool to have in terms of news. Have I got to see Avatar in concert yet? No. They have not announced an Irish showing of the concert, so I haven't been able to go. I probably will go if they announce one for like Dublin, but they have not yet. Which also brings up, where on earth is the Book 2 soundtrack for Avatar? I thought the plan was to kind of do that somewhat regularly, and it's been like a year since the Book 1 effectively. I forget the exact date, but we're in or around that year point or already past it for that. Haven't heard a thing really. I guess it's still part of the plan, but not sure what's going on there, because like we were expecting them to like really start getting them out there, and then we'd be able to move on to Korra eventually and get like the Book 2 Korra soundtrack, which is probably the one I'm most hyped for, some of the tracks there. But just in general, like but all of the other Korra stuff is exciting. I don't know what's going on there. Like is this maybe where like Avatar in concert has that potentially got in the way of them being able to record the Book 2 one? I don't actually know. Like I get it, they never promised a specific release schedule, but what are they doing? Maybe they'll have a better rollout as we build into Avatar Studios as well, but it's a bit awkward. Physical copy sold out, pretty sure, but I'm pretty sure it was also a very, very limited run on that vinyl. I never checked to see if it ever got like a reprint or like came back into stock anywhere, but I don't think it was ever like a huge run necessarily. But I also don't know what good or bad numbers are for vinyls, and just no clue what the situation is there. Other things. Oh yeah, I probably wanted to mention this. Remember, we've got an Avatar crowdfunding campaign coming up. We are a day and a half effectively away from Journey of Aang. Kickstarter. I keep saying Kickstarter. GameFound crowdfunding for this board game going live. I'm excited to see what they do with this. I've not been super impressed with the kind of pre-campaign launch communication, but I'm hoping when the campaign launches they have some good stuff there to show off like what's going on here. Some of the comments seem to suggest that they will have like other stuff, like there'll be a few different tiers you can back at, where it's the game and some extras. I'm guessing there'll be stuff like, you know, it's the game plus a poster plus something else, some sort of an accessory type thing, and then of course there's this like a cool kind of coin free gift thing if you subscribe ahead of time, which that's interesting. They actually put a price on it, so that's actually interesting. I didn't know that. So I guess when the campaign goes live, that's how much the coin will cost. Whereas if you follow the campaign now and back it, you'll get that coin for free. That's interesting. Yeah, that is the interesting point here, because like this is the game. Like if you check on my channel, I've already done they sent me a review copy of this. Now, this is not a finalized copy of the game, which is why I'm very interested to see what they do here, because my plan is to probably back this and get it. But if I don't really see any evidence that they've like adjusted anything really from like the review copy in terms of like the components and stuff like that, I'm not sure. Like, I'd like to have the full set of cards, because the review copy I didn't get like all the cards that are going to be available in the game. I like what the game is, so once the pricing isn't isn't crazy, I'm interested to see what they do here, because it is a nice kind of thing. It's not a super complex game, but there's definitely strategy to it, and I think they've kind of advertised it well in that sense. They haven't done a great job in the pre-launch of the campaign of saying how the game works, so that's where like the video that I put up is pretty good, because I show you how to play it. But the stuff is pretty nice. Just to quickly show off some of this stuff. Yeah, like the kind of the track that you kind of keep track of like your elemental scores on is very nice. The place where you put the elemental cards, it's a pretty nice game board. I think whoops, bumped the microphone. I think I showed the map board off before, but I really like it because it's a quite detailed map that actually has quite a few locations on it. Like you can see there, they have like Dao up there. I'm interested to see what it ends up being in the kind of absolute finalized version. Just because there's some stuff that's kind of interesting. But yeah, stuff like, you know, this, I'd like to see this be improved in the final version. I'm assuming it will be, but I'm wondering will they be able to communicate that properly, because the stuff that they have here is definitely just the stuff from the review copy of the game. So I'm hoping there's a lot of updated visuals when the campaign goes live to get that across. Because otherwise, are they going to do a thing where they're asking you to back it on the basis of like, we'll update you as to what the updates will look like? That's going to be a little bit of a challenging thing. Certainly in the review copies, the APA is painted, which is nice. And I think in some of the comments they said that I think that is the intent, or it might be an extra. I don't actually know. There's these they sent me these patches, so I assume these patches will probably be I think they're like iron-on patches. They sent me a few of these as well in my review copy, so I assume these will probably be one of the maybe optional extras or freebies that you'll be able to get. But yeah, the dice is definitely like the main thing. The dice are super nice. I think they've already said in terms of some of the comments that some of them will change. Like I think they said the air dice are going to be slightly different, just for contrast of like it's silver paint on kind of clear / white dice. So I think they're maybe going to alter that to be a bit clearer. So we'll see what they do here. I just want I just hope they're clear with the information. I'm definitely planning to at least cover what information they have on the campaign, but if it's just pretty standard of just basically you can buy it and there's like one bonus thing, that might be a little bit of a letdown, but we'll see what ends up actually happening. Because yeah, the stuff is nice that they have in the game here. Like if it is going to be full on painted, it's nice. Trainer cards are pretty good. Not really new art apart from the game board, but the cards are pretty nicely put together, for sure. Especially these. This does seem to be new art here. For the technique cards, they're kind of nice. Show screenshots is never fantastic, but I guess the stock art archives do only go like so far. And then I think they've probably got enough feedback that they probably will change some of the stuff on the board, potentially. I think one of the things in one of the updates said something about... did they have a question on one of them? Might have been this. Yeah, this. This is definitely new. What challenges would you like to see in the game? Stop Jet, May, Boomy's Trials ended up winning. So I'm guessing other feedback from other players probably was sort of like add other new challenge cards or other new unique spots onto the map potentially. So eager to see what ends up happening here. So I'm interested to see how it goes. The only other thing is just I hope Beetle and Grimm don't out of nowhere decide that, oh, we're going to drop our Voyage of the Unity thing out of absolutely nowhere immediately after this. Especially if this is maybe not priced maybe amazingly, maybe shipping is quite expensive. We don't know what the scope of that is. I hope that doesn't happen because I would like to be able to get both, but we'll see what happens. I'm guessing the fact that they haven't made the details from the panel super public, it's probably super late fall, and maybe we're talking more of like late November. So at the very least, there'll be at least like a month between the two Kickstarters. That would be the hope, I think. I'm assuming because ultimately they're both licensed to Avatar Studios and Paramount. I'm assuming there's some sense of communication here so that they don't completely cross wires and kind of limit what each of them are able to do. So hopefully there's at least a month gap between the two of them. Because they've done the setup for this, but they really haven't promoted the Roku one just yet. So I'm assuming it's still a good few weeks away ultimately. But I'll cover it whenever it comes out. But yeah, I'm probably going to wrap up the stream there. For the most part, it does feel like news from the year is just about done. The next new content release is technically Team Avatar Treasury Library Edition annotations. I believe the book has annotations because it said there's commentary. There might be some new content in there. I'm not expecting much though, because I don't think the annotations have ever been like amazing, but there could be something there. That's technically some small pieces of new content, because it is an edition. It's a reprint edition of those books that actually has some new stuff in there. But yeah, in terms of completely brand new story content, yeah, there's nothing for the rest of this month. Nothing for November. Nothing for December. I Am Tough is in January for art. There's new art in that. But yeah, in terms of story content, yeah, it is Mako solo comic in February. Yeah, pretty sure that's the situation there, and there's pretty much no chance of anything else dropping because like publishing, we'd know about it like well in advance if something else was coming. So there's that. Realms Collide, I suppose technically is like quote unquote new content. Their plan apparently is to drop the game this year. They seem to be able to fully commit that the game is for sure coming out this year. Asked them for a release date, and it's Panic Station. So I don't know what the details are there. It's a very odd situation there where we know for sure we can put this game out in the next 10 weeks, but we cannot tell you which of those weeks it will be in. It's weird, very weird. But it's a non-canon story, that sort of thing. Is there review copies for the comics? I don't believe review copy request has gone up for the Mako comic yet. Based on previous times, it should go up for the next couple of weeks, I think. So I guess I'll try that for usual, like I usually do. Obviously, I didn't get a review copy for the last comic, which was a bit random, having previously got like 5 or 6 of them in a row. So we'll see what happens with the next one, if they approve that, because I really would like to get a review copy for the Mako comic, but if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's fine. I'll still cover it either way. At least to me, I feel like my early reviews help generate hype. Like, especially with the Azula comic, I felt like the early review that I put out there helped to generate excitement while also setting expectations and helping the discussion around that book a little bit. But we'll see what happens. So yeah, for me, Realms Collide is mostly about new art for novel characters, because they know, they've confirmed there are going to be comic and novel characters introduced into the game, but they've not confirmed any of them yet. So I don't know when those announcements are going to be, because I have no clue what the situation with the game actually is when it comes to, like, have any new characters been added to the game since it's been soft launched? I don't believe so. But like I'm part of their kind of content creator program on that, but like I feel so disconnected from it overall. Like I've even had the discussion with like the community manager guy of like, hey, like you're asking me basically and other people to like make content about this game when like we can't even play it, and it's like you're effectively requesting that we do videos about like patch notes for a game most of us don't have access to, which is fine for the few content creators from regions where the game is out, but it's a little bit like, what are you doing? On the other side of things, it just feels a little bit like weird the way it's going, where like to a certain degree I feel like, you know, in a way, why haven't you like given me access to the game early to promote it overall? And look, they're not demanding I make content for the game. It's just a sort of like, hey, some new content for you guys to potentially make videos about, and it's the patch notes for the soft launch. And it's like, okay. And it's just like, and I said it to him, it was just like, I hope you understand that like I'm gonna make content about the game when it comes out, but like this isn't news. that it's just that sort of thing. And then yeah, the pre-register stuff, I'm pretty sure what they're offering, even if that like fully maxes out, is pretty meh. Like, sure, I think those 10 scrolls, I think that gets you Sokka, because I think that's how the scroll system in the game works. So you'll just have Sokka as a character, but I'm pretty sure you get that pretty quickly anyway, because I don't think Sokka's on the rarer side of things when it comes to characters. So I don't know. I'm interested to see how it does when it comes out, but I've got to be really honest, like, unless this game is being supported incredibly well, sort of like behind the scenes, and they really have stuff ready to go and roll out, I can't see this game lasting, really. They might force it through, because I guess they probably won't have the problems that ultimately took down Avatar Generations, which was mostly the Embracer Group stuff behind the scenes rather than anything specifically about the game itself. But I don't know. I just get the impression it's not going to be for most fans, and unless they do some major improvements, it's just going to be, I think it's just going to be most people just looking for art, which is, I think, mostly where I'm at with it. Yeah, Avatar Generations feels like a massive loss. Like, now it's been quite a while since then. Like imagine over the last like year, all the content we would have had in Avatar Generations. Like the Kyoshi era airbenders would have been out by now, potentially other content relating to that. Like they were planning to add like Avatar 1 and stuff like that to the game, I'm pretty sure. So there might have been like a 1 event that might have had some of those characters. And who knows, we might have been getting like, you know, Shadow of Kyoshi, or at the very least we would have been like completing, theoretically, Rise of Kyoshi adaptations, meaning we would have had like official pieces of art depicting moments from the shows, like properly debuting Glowworm like in proper context, moving on to Shadow of Kyoshi, like some of those things would have been really, really cool. Avatar Generations, I don't think it's coming back. It looks like they're able to utilize some of the ideas in the new game, but because the game is fundamentally just like a different game, like reskinned to be Avatar, I'm not even sure they have the capacity to have that sort of like story content style stuff. And we definitely need to see, when it comes to like when they do have the novel characters, are they actually going to do it? Because I have a bad feeling that they're the sort of devs that are going to go like, we introduced Avatar Roku into the game. See, we told you there's a novel character, and it's 70-year-old Roku as he appears in like past lives and like from ATLA rather than novel Roku. I think they actually are going to have not actual novel characters. It's just, please put some names out there to generate some excitement. I think they really, really need to do that. But even then, like, I think the problem that we have is that, like, the best we're gonna get is like there's not even that, as far as I've seen from the game, there's not even that much like art necessarily in it. So like, there's got to be their kind of like main little icon image. I think there's one. I guess gonna be maybe like one main piece of art. But this is a game where mostly it is the like 3D model of the character. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah, the game not being canon is so odd because it just is basically like, don't care about these new characters. Like, Borte is like interesting, but also like the questions I would have to make that character interesting are clearly things you don't really have an intent to answer. Where they're from this tribe, from this place, but it's a different realm that doesn't actually matter, and it's like, okay. Like Father Glowworm, really exciting plot, but it's nothing related to the main continuity. Look, I'm sure there's some interesting story element surrounding whatever way they've structured potentially like the defeat of Glowworm in this game, like Chan Yu full power Glowworm, and there's probably some crazy cutscene of like multiple I'm guessing it's going to be what, like Aang, Roku, Kyoshi, Korra, maybe Karuk and Yang Chen all together doing some crazy Avatar state thing to take out like Chan Yu and Glowworm. There might be some really cool non-canon, just like that's cool cutscene that comes out of it, but beyond that, I'm just like, can you put side story stuff that is canon in this game? That seems more interesting to me. Because if the novel stuff really is literally just that, oh, we've introduced some new characters that you can pull via the scrolls, and that's it, like basically banners, and there's nothing else, okay, art opportunity, but missed story opportunity. Timeline stuff, well, I don't know if they want to introduce timeline stuff into Avatar, so like this is just like, it's non-canon. I get their idea, but it's like, why didn't you just do what Avatar Generations did and just like you can do stories, you can cordon off what characters get involved in specific parts of the stories, but that for gameplay purposes you can just mix and match. Like, if it feels a little bit overly weirdly thought out that they just like, let's construct this entirely new thing to explain the characters all looking different, when no, just do something else. It's just weird. Are they going to put Ozai and Yun as heroes? Probably. Like, I think there's a high likelihood of, like, especially in the Kyoshi side of things, I'm guessing some of the first characters that are going to be put into the game probably are the characters we already have from Kyoshi. So Yun, Rangi, Jeonju, Kelsang probably will be just like straight in there. Whereas I think we're more looking for like characters beyond that. At the very least, it is something new for Avatar. It is a game. It's a free game. You don't have to put money into it, and it's going to be something. And especially based on like the video game podcast where like all of this information came from. The fact that the game that's coming out in a few weeks was literally like a 2-3 minute footnote in that podcast tells me that, you know, we no longer have to treat this upcoming mobile game as representing the future of Avatar in gaming. Already there's going to be a fighting game that I think will be much more interesting coming out next year. In multiple years' time, we'll get this RPG. And then at the end, he teased a bunch of other ideas that there'll be Avatar puzzle games and all other sorts of stuff. And we just have to accept that, look, there's going to be a lot of smaller Avatar games that we're maybe not super interested in. But there'll also be some that are probably interesting. And I don't think Realms Collide succeeding or failing means that much. And so, yeah, like, I don't suspect I'll be putting, like, any money into this game at all. It just, unless it really surprises me with what it actually is when it launches, it doesn't seem like an Avatar game, really. But we'll see what happens whenever it comes out. So, yeah, in terms of, I suppose, rest of the year, like, I don't even know, like, when there'll be other times for, like, streams necessarily. Like, because obviously, like, there's potential opportunities to do other discussions, but it kind of really feels like news needs to drop to kind of prompt these streams. So hopefully there is some other news that hits as we get towards the end of the year, and we maybe do finally get some Avatar Studios news and other stuff actually hits. How confident am I of a lot of that stuff? I'm not really sure. But actually, now that I think about it, something I almost forgot about is, because of the release date of this, or at least the planned release date of this means that preview pages can't be that far away. Because, like, this is the crazy thing. Like, I almost have not thought about this in my head. If they in any way stick to the release date on this book's like 5 to 6 months away. So we should be getting preview pages for this, like, soonish. If we already have, like, the full preview pages for a book that's out, like, the month before, we're going to get preview pages for this, like, before the end of the year, realistically. Even if it gets pushed back by a few weeks, we're still getting preview pages for this year, realistically. Now, there's no convention for them to come out, so I guess Edelweiss and stuff like that will just be updated with them, but the release is close enough that's sort of just an automatic thing, and especially if it's just the logistics delays, they don't really impact massively when the stuff happens. Especially with it being relatively close. So, that could be cool. We'll get our first look at this book probably sooner rather than later, to the point where it's almost like I'm almost surprised they didn't have any maybe to show at the convention then and there, like a work in progress, like even one maybe without the color or something like that. But who knows what the situation is there. Netflix Avatar news. Yeah, I guess filming has... I forget what the situation was. Did they say it was going to start in August or November? Sorry, October or November. I guess maybe early rumors of casting stuff will happen. And we'll start to hear kind of more details about that. Yeah, that's definitely something I forgot about. But any news I'm guessing will be like, you know, the sort of leaked information, like we were getting well ahead of time for that stuff. But yeah, have to remember that, because yeah, I'm already thinking about sort of like the end of year videos and that. Like, yeah, I'm probably gonna have to do a pretty decent section in the year in review on the Netflix show. I have to kind of almost remember that because it was right at the start of the year. So we'll see if anything happens there. But yeah, there'll be some other news here. Because yeah, there's that. You know, this Kickstarter is going to be next month. And even if you're not planning to get the game, it's going to be like how much it makes, given that it's like a board game. It's going to be kind of exciting to follow. Same goes for the Roku kind of RPG thing, just to see how popular Avatar is. There's stuff happening, even if it's not like everything we want. But we're slowly but surely getting there. And I'm hoping they give us something by the end of the year. But yeah, I'm going to wrap up the stream there. And at least try to maybe have a stream at some point before the end of the year to cover any sort of news. The next kind of big videos, I suppose, from me is one more adventure from the Uncle Iroh Adventure Guide to do for the Korra Era one. That will probably be at some point next week. The Team Avatar Treasury Library Edition is the week afterwards. I'm probably going to get that and do a video on that. And we'll see if the annotations have anything going on with them. And then I guess pretty much I can do my story moments video probably like early November-ish, because I don't think I need to wait for Realms Collide to do that. But that's what I'm thinking about. But yeah, that's been the stream. Thanks to everyone here for coming out to listen, be involved. But yeah, that's been the stream. Thanks for watching, and bye.